So for the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to have a little bit of a review about around 2016. It's obviously been quite a significant year in more ways than one, that we all know. But we're going to take a look at it from the eyes of Aimee Cliff, Ansel Neckles, and Elijah from Butters. Give it up for our people. So before we delve in, for those of us who don't know who you are, give us a little bit of an insight into, what you do and what keeps you busy.
My name's Aimee. I work at The Fader, which is a New York-based music magazine, but we have a team of 3 in the UK, which we launched our UK office last year. So we're mostly trying to authentically cover UK, EU music for an American publication and a global audience. And I have a show on NTS, and yeah, that's me.
I am Ansel Neckles, co-founder of Let's Be Brief. We are a professional development platform for creative industry. We upskill and champion folks who work, laterally in the creative sector in any number of ways. Much of that lends itself to an array of workshops, masterclasses, talks, and the fact that we run a creative agency to help people develop their brand, proposition, etc. So yes, that is us.
I'm Elijah. I'm a DJ, kind of mainly focused on grime. I run a label called Butters. This year we released a record from DWE, Swindle and Flavor D. And I'm born and bred here as well in Hackney. And yeah.
We've all been busy in 2016 in more ways than one. And a lot has gone on, obviously. But is there anything that kind of particularly resonates, or particularly if I'm going to really profound in all your year of working, with brands, working for The Fader, working and DJing with Butters, etc.?
I used to have a residency at Fabric, and it closed, and it was kind of interesting to see everyone galvanised to get that kind of back open. And I didn't think people cared about club culture that much. In London and the UK and even worldwide, people hit me up from all over the place that have probably never been to a club and thought that was important to fight back up against that. And I think that's going to filter down, hopefully, to other issues, apart from clubbing and music, hopefully, that we can just use all these tools, Twitter, Facebook, for good, man, instead of crap.
For me, I think it's a year of increased urgency. I think we have often, been afforded the opportunity to be quite lethargic in our ways, views, and our approaches to life. And I think this year has been a kick up the arse for many of us, both politically, economically, and as makers. What I'm noticing and what I hope to see more of is a trend towards greater levels of urgency and folks sticking their head above the parapet to get serious things done. Because art for art's sake tickles my armpits, but it doesn't do too much for me other than that. But what I want to see is people solving real problems, because there's a fair few out there. But it's about taking proactive steps. And I'm seeing people that are really starting to galvanize themselves and work collectively and cohesively to make real things happen, because it isn't just about nice ideas, it's about getting them done.
Aimee?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that in terms of a sense of heightened urgency and awareness. And I think there was a trend in electronic music that Philip Sherburn wrote about in Pitchfork at the end of 2015 about people like Lotic and Arca and this kind of club music that was kind of challenging the form of dance music and explicitly bringing politics into this kind of club space. Not that club music was apolitical before, but just this new focus on identity politics in club music. And I think that we've seen that move forward a lot this year. And I think there are people now who are trying to figure out how to make that not just symbolically political, but how to kind of make it practical and, like you say, galvanize. There was a compilation released this week of producers from around the world called the Co-op compilation, which I'd recommend if you haven't heard of it. It's a free download, but the concept behind it was that they recommended a list of organisations and charities you could donate or give time to in response to downloading it. And I think that's quite a good, pertinent example of how in 2016 people are trying to find answers, like work together to do more than the sum of, just nice ideas.
Who else was, resonated with you artistically for you this year, Aimee?
A producer called Eliza Crampton, I think, was probably my favourite electronic release of the year.
For what reason?
She just, her music is kind of unlike anything else. It's really hard to describe. I guess it falls into that kind of deconstructed club music thing. But she kind of brought in all these collaborators for that album. Lexi from London, YB from Copenhagen, Chino Moby and Rabbit from America. And they kind of, just that whole, like, the way, it was quite an ego-free project, I think, which was quite an interesting, like, utopian vision of what an album can be. I think it was all these people coming together and creating something together. And yeah, it's just a really, like, mad piece of music. It doesn't sound like anything else, I think.
And was it independent record, right?
It was on Break World Records, I think, or something. Yeah, I might have got that name wrong, but yeah, I think that was that.
Ansel, you had some, what's your visual take on 2016?
My broader visual take. I'm noticing a move away from visual wallpaper. And
what's visual wallpaper?
Visual wallpaper. When I say that, I think of aesthetic without consideration. And when I see things that look nice, I don't necessarily attribute them to good design. When I see things that look like they're trying to address an issue, that's when I see design. But more importantly, I guess, even more than what I see visually, is how I'm observing folks working collectively. And just to kind of sneak in on that question about who I see working in that way, there's a label called 22A, a jazz collective, who are Southeast London based, and these guys are kicking ass, and they're doing what jazz music should, which is ask hard questions and pose real kind of collective, energetic means of helping drive things forward. And they're just showing how locality can really play a central part in helping to make a movement stronger. And I think we've been quite reticent to own our physical spaces in the way that Americans have done historically. If you're talking about jazz and black music, these guys are noting that, you know, their Southeast London neighborhood is awash with collective creativity, and they're really looking to galvanize that creativity. The grime scene, I think, has really understood that in this country really well. You know, you've had scenes in Manchester, etc. But what I'm really loving is these guys bringing the urgency back and recognizing that actually strength is power. And that, to me, has really been exciting.
Is that the same in the grime scene? We talked about the grime.
I think we've just realised that now. So everyone else before, I think the attitude was that what we were doing was wrong. Okay. Wrong. So what was happening like the last, I don't know, 10 years maybe, was the idea that this music could be like commercial, that what we do, grime, MCs could be on TV, on like GMTV or something, maybe with like S Club 7, a little bit, something like that, in between being authentic at the same time. And there was just a rejection of it, period. And then I think a few people in the last couple of years have made people realize that you can be yourself and be widely accepted, even with like aggressive content, even with like not being on the radio. You can sell shows, you can sell music, you can be selling merchandise, and at the end of the day make a living off of what you want to do without being like, you know, traditional album selling artist. And it took a long time for grime to recognize the power of that.
Would you say grime matured in 2016?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's more like becoming childlike about it. It's more like, okay, this is what I want to do, and then making everything else correct itself around you because people like you.
That's interesting, because obviously now, you know, in 2016, you know, grime is now a category on Apple, which it wasn't for a long time. You know, and obviously with recent accolades, you know, it's been a significant year for for a number of artists, you know.
We can say Skepta. Don't worry, it's all right. I don't mind talking about Skepta. It's fine.
I don't mind talking about Skepta either.
Okay.
You know, but it's been a significant year. You know, it's been really significant, right? So you know, I guess the sense that maybe maturity isn't the right word. Maybe the word is, you know, now grime is like, you know, it's like hip hop. It's like pop. It's, you know, it's a word that.
No, it's not like any of them things. It's just like grime.
Why not?
It's just like grime.
What do you mean? You know, so if I'm a layman, I don't know what that means. What do you mean? It's a genre to most people.
Yeah. So having to compare all the time is what led it to being creatively inept. Okay. So having to be compared to hip hop or the conditions of 1980s Brooklyn is not like that in 2016 London or Manchester. And that's what kind of made it boxed in. Like we were trying to be Skepta may have been trying to be Run DMC in 1989, whereas it's not the case. Him being himself now in 2016 is the most important thing, rather than like being, you know, a underground version of a pop thing. Nah, it's just what it is by itself. And yeah, that's a hard place to get to because you're not, you know, we're not UK dancehall or UK hip hop or something like that. It's just, let's start from here and then go like that.
So do you think that, you know, the identity of grime, you know, as with a lot of music forms, changes and evolves, you know, and also has to play this game that it's not, as you said, it's not 1980s Brooklyn, it's not, you know, wherever, it's not the favelas in Brazil or whatever, you know. Is that part of grime's dilemma, would you say?
Yeah, and it's, I guess there's so many things that it could be compared to because we see like successful genres and underground scenes from other things. That the natural thing is like, what's the difference between hip hop and grime? But okay, we can challenge that with music. Like, this is not a bad thing. But like the pressures from outside of that, but outside of the grime scene, make it bad, not inside. People have always made good music, always like done things that are interesting, but because you're putting it through the lens of a hip hop eye or the lens of a pop eye, like I can't sell this. This is crap. This wasn't designed for you to sell to 1 million people. For grime, it's good. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, I know exactly what you mean, sure.
Yeah. So.
Back to Ansel real quick. So you brought some images for us to kind of look at and talk about. Yeah, let's look at the first one maybe.
You'll no doubt be familiar with Solange Knowles. What's interesting for me about Solange is how she's been able to bring art house to the mainstream, and she's also been able to imbue her art with her very strong, unapologetic political sensibilities. And I think there are a lot of artists who have, over time, probably thought taking that brave step could be counterintuitive to a successful career. And I think what she's shown is not only can she influence her sister, who is very much the embodiment of popular music culture in America, in terms of her creative output, what she's been able to do is grow community. And she's always been about a very detailed aesthetic, but that aesthetic has substance attached to it. So it's not just about the beauty of the image, although there has always been that. There's always been a clear, distinct taste-related kind of feel to what she does, i.e., and when I say taste, I mean things that she clearly likes, things that she adheres to, things that she is willing to celebrate. And I think that's what's really been quite powerful about her work over the course of the year. And I think for many artists, it works as a bass player. Obviously, having a sister as famous as Beyonce doesn't hurt, but what it does show is that when you really do take the steps to define your kind of environment, you lead, irrespective of your scale or size as an artist. And I think that's what's really been strong about what she's done.
And I guess this year is about Solange on her own terms, right? So
absolutely.
Away from the shadow of her sister and, you know.
Well, this is it. Well, I mean, when you're in that kind of situation, you think, well, what can she do to carve a niche for herself aside from what her sister's done so successfully? And I think what she's done, and which I think is the greatest example to any artist, is to be herself, to be the embodiment of her own values and of her own position and perspective on the world. And I think that's what's really been the driving force. And also, I think she's understood that to do niche is to often, well, if you do it well, to become global as a result of a niche sensibility, because she's understood that to speak to other makers, and not just people who make things, but for people who are trying to build communities themselves, you can grow something far bigger than the sum of its parts just by trying to connect and contribute to a cultural space. Often artists say, please buy my album, but what you see Solange doing through our other endeavors is looking at how cities can develop their communities, you know, and through events, through things not necessarily related to her work. So it becomes this, it's not so much of a selfish endeavor, but it comes back to you. You give, you receive.
And then let it.
And it's a cycle. Sure. Exactly. And that's what we're seeing with her work.
And there's a thread with the next image, right? With the
yes. This video is Nobody Speak by DJ Shadow, featuring Run the Jewels. For me, one of the most confident, cutting-edge hip-hop groups, not just of this time, but of any time, really. They're guys that have been plying their trade for many years. And again, they're testament to consistent quality and, in this moment, a combination of superpowers. But this is with a director named Sam Billing, who created this video which, as abstract as it may seem, probably could closely represent any kind of EU meeting that takes place in The Hague on any given day. And if you were to
swap
find
out
out
the flag,
exactly,
swap out the flag for something blue.
And if you've never seen this video, it turns a bit mental. One big scuff. Basically, it's like a UKIP conversation happening where dudes just duffing each other up. But what it is I think for us it represents it's an end of an age of political niceties. And I think we're at a point now where people have felt restricted in their opinion and their perspective, as informed or ill-informed as they may be. And I think a lot of people are operating with the handbrake off. And this video was kind of indicative of that lack of that handbrake. And we're looking at the era of Trump. We're looking at the era of Brexit. And we're looking at how folks are able to shape political spaces through quite poisonous rhetoric. And these guys really effectively tackle that. But this video is really a clear, crisp, abstract embodiment of all of those sensibilities, which is why I think it really works quite well. And again, unapologetic guys. You look at Run the Jewels, those guys have been at the forefront of, in America, Bernie Sanders' political campaign. Now, for artists, welcoming political candidates that in themselves represent the alternative, and I mean the real alternative to any political doctrine, you could see that as being potentially at risk of damaging their careers. But these guys are saying, this is what's happening, this is what needs to be done, and I'm going to back it. And that's to be respected.
Aimee, is there anyone else that you feel has the same kind of power and influence as Shadow and Run the Jewels project?
The same kind of power and influence. I've just got that image of Kanye walking into Trump Tower today, like in my head, and that's all I can think of. Yeah, I think in terms of like actively getting involved in campaigns, it was Killer Mike was really like one of the few. Yeah, and in terms of, we were talking about this before with the EU referendum. I don't know how many musicians really spoke up on that, or how cool it was to talk about it before it happened. And it was really, I feel like people are becoming more mobilized in the wake of these things happening. People are starting to, realize the power that they have a bit more, I think.
Okay, we've got one more picture. Perhaps, Aimee, you'd like to maybe just comment on it before we move over to Ansel.
Well, yeah, this performance was incredible, and is obviously part of the global movement of the Black Lives Matter movement onto the kind of mainstream stage, and indicative of how those conversations have become fully subsumed into the mainstream now, in a way, which is, I want to say, a good thing, but then also that's still like unnecessary, like so far from it's not, you know, there's more work to be done. That conversation needs to keep being had, you know. Yeah.
Ant?
I chose this because it was expressive, it was unapologetic, and it was very much indicative of Kendrick Lamar as an artist. And I think to deliver this at the Grammys, which is in itself an institution that, while wishing to be seen as cutting edge, can often, and is often, quite a safe space, in spite of the razzmatazz. But what he did was to really bring to the fore issues that are affecting a great many Americans, and it showed how art can really be used to effectively surmise a nuanced range of political issues and to kind of really drive that stake home in an environment where people maybe just came for a good time. You know, that wasn't the time you were going to get when Kendrick came out in chains, because
in force.
And it's about making people uncomfortable, and I think art should be about that, and I think this performance was about making an audience uncomfortable as well as being able to celebrate an experience, which in this case was the black experience in America, which I think was really quite powerful. And again, unapologetic. If you take that stance, if you take an unapologetic stance, people can't ask you to apologize because they know it's a waste of fucking time, you know. And
Indeed.
This is what I think. You can edit that if you feel free, but that's what
It's fine, man.
That's what Kendrick did, you know, and that's what he does. And I think it was an example to other artists that you can say what needs to be said, and you can say it in such a way that it will be spoken about and it will last, and and that's what legacy looks like. Nights like that.
So, a couple of questions for you guys. So, what has been the sound of 2016? If there was a sound, what is it? Starting with you, Elijah.
Oh, me. I think it's the sound of authenticity. The idea that if something just looks or sounds fake, not into it. Whether that's a collaboration or, you know, brand link up. Anything that looks not legit, people will just switch off to it. And that's happening more than ever. So I don't think there's like, you know, a particular genre that's in. But when something sounds real, people will gravitate to it, whether that's big or small.
Hans?
Agree with that 100%. I think it's the sound of truth versus the sound of a lie. You know when you're listening to one, either way. But also, for me, more than a sound, again, sorry to kind of move it across, but it's a year of independence, and I recognise artists recognising their power as platforms. And I think that power kind of flows through their music. People like Kendrick who recognise their power as a platform to speak on something, as well as a platform to sell product. And I think there's a confidence in that, which means that people buy into, or sometimes are inherently threatened by, the very presence of your creativity, just for the mere fact that you suggest the idea of ownership, be it of the IP or the ownership of the subject or the ownership of the emotion, i.e. these are my emotions. These are not something shaped by an industry which wants amorphous product to be filling shelves to make labels' jobs a lot easier. But it's about, for me, the confidence that people are now developing to see that actually they are the platform and they can do it themselves. People like Frank Ocean, you know, that's the sound of this year, because my guy just killed it, you know? And he's killing it because it's about his experience, which for many people represents a problem-solving body of work, finding your own identity in a space that has historically or inherently prevented you from being able to do so, you know? That's a sound in itself, you know? So that's what I'm kind of been really excited by 2016.
Aimee?
Yeah, I completely agree with both of those answers. I think you can hear a sound of independence emerging in the sense of artists not needing to conform to a certain kind of form or certain rules that used to exist in the music industry. Like Frank Ocean was one of the biggest albums of the year, and that, like, well, he kind of released 2 albums, and one of them was a video of him building a staircase. So it's like there's not really the same rules, I think, anymore. And I think Yeah, in terms of club music and dance music I was talking about earlier, I think totally what Elijah was saying, you can tell the difference between people trying to capitalize on a trend and people who are authentically making something that expresses them and just sounds like nothing else. So yeah, I think there's not so much there as a sound as a kind of attitude of just complete out there experimentation.
Elijah, Ansel, Aimee, thank you so much. Give it up.